আসসালামু আলাইকুম। মার্সিসাইড কনসালটেন্সি বাংলাদেশে আপনাদের সবাইকে আবারও স্বাগতম। আজকে আমাদের ব্রিটিশ শিক্ষিকা লরেইন
Hello.
আমাদেরকে IELTS রাইটিং স্ট্র্যাটেজিস নিয়ে শেখাবে এবং ওনার স্কিলস গুলো আমাদের সাথে শেয়ার করবে। এবং আজকে আমাদের IELTS রাইটিং পার্ট 1 এর কিছু লেসন উনি আমাদের সাথে শেয়ার করবে।
Hello, everyone. It is Thursday morning where I am in lovely Scotland. So I hope you're all having a nice day wherever you are.
Yes.
Today I'm going to be talking about, yes, as you mentioned, Sanjida, the writing part of the IELTS exam. So I'm going to share my screen with you all and I'll get started with our slides. So if anybody wants to quickly grab a pen and paper to make some notes, you can go ahead and do that. Alternatively, you can watch this recording later on the Facebook page. Okay, so it's a bit
কেউ
slow
যদি এই
today.
লেসনসটি দেখতে চান, সবাই পেন্সিল এবং কলম নিয়ে আপনারা নোটস গুলো ডাউন করতে পারেন, অথবা কেউ যদি এই ক্লাসটি দেখতে চান আপনারা আমাদের ফেসবুক পেজে এবং আমাদের ইউটিউব চ্যানেলেও এই ক্লাসটি পাবেন পুনরায়।
Lovely.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Sanjida. Okay, so if you are planning to take the IELTS exam, you will already know that the exam is split into two different options. You've got the general and the academic. I'm going to be focusing on the academic today, mainly to support students who want to come over to the UK. So as we talk about these topics today, I'm going to be focusing maybe specifically on students who want to come to the UK to study and thrive here, really have a good experience. Okay, so the writing task in the academic IELTS exam is split into two tasks. We've got 60 minutes in total to complete both of the tasks. Okay, first one takes 20 minutes, the second one takes 40. And the topics that you will be asked to analyse and to write about will be related to general areas of interest. Okay, so unlike the general exam, you will be talking at a level which is suitable for people entering undergraduate and postgraduate studies or looking for a job in an English speaking or a multinational corporation with English as the main language. So the style of your writing needs to be formal. Okay, that means no contractions, like I am, I'm, can't, I've, things like that. But instead write the full form of the word. And we'll look at these examples in a moment. Okay, so task 1, and that's what we'll be looking at today, that will be in the form of a graph, table, chart, or diagram. And you'll be asked to describe, summarize, or explain the information in your own words. It says in your own words as well, but you need to stick to what is on the image that you're looking at. Okay, so you need to describe and present data. Okay, describe the stages of a process. These are all options. Okay, you won't have to do all 4 of these. You might need to talk about how something works, or you might need to describe an object, plan, or design. These are the different types of visual charts and graphs that you'll be looking at. And I really, really recommend that you take the time to practice along official IELTS materials. Okay, so going to the official IELTS website or another reputable source and practicing along with those. There are some materials online which I wouldn't say are particularly accurate or high quality. So just make sure that the materials that you're studying are in line with the IELTS exam so that you're prepared for the exam itself. Okay, any questions so far, Sanjida?
No, I understand this. Okay.
Oh, great. Lovely. Okay, so here's an interesting and important word, visual. Visual information. Yeah, so you'll be taking a visual aid, we would say, or an image, and you'll
Yes.
be converting it into text. Okay. So have you practiced yourself, Sanjida, using, real official materials for the IELTS exam? Have you practiced this
Yes,
before? You
I
have.
have practiced using chart and
Mhm.
images. I try to summarize those images and try to write into test.
Great.
Yes.
Lovely. That's wonderful. Yes, the table and the chart are the most common forms that I've seen
And
anyway.
there is something, it's called pie chart in
Mhm,
diagram, maybe. Yes, but
mhm.
I think the table and images are much easier than the graph. And yes,
Sometimes, yeah, normally when you have a
yes,
pie chart in task one, you've got two pie charts next to each other and you're asked to compare the
yes,
two of them. So there's a lot to take in there, yeah. But it really depends on the chart itself. Some of
yes,
them appear easier than others. But I would say, even though you've got 20 minutes to focus on this task, you don't have to spend the whole time writing. It's
yes,
important to take the time to look at it, analyze it, try to understand it before you start writing.
yes,
Yeah. Okay, great. So you'll be asked, because of these visual information, this lays out data for you, and you'll be asked to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features, okay, the most important elements that jump out at you, the first things you see when you're looking at this visual aid, and then make comparisons where relevant, okay, if it's relevant to make a comparison.
yes.
And this is called an information transfer task. So that means you're
Visual to
transferring,
text.
yes, visual to text. Lovely, Sanjida.
Thank you.
Okay, so how do we lay out this task here? How do we lay it out? Well, it's important to write an introduction. Sanjida, what do you think the introduction should say?
It is about the image or about the chart, something it is related with.
Good.
Yes, and
More,
we have
more.
to write the introduction. It's maybe within three or four sentences, or two or three, not more than three. Yes,
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So we would say normally that yes, the introduction and the conclusion should be about the same size if you have a
yes,
conclusion, and then the body, the two paragraphs in the middle, if you get two paragraphs,
body
they need to be about the
paragraphs.
same size. Yes,
Yes,
exactly. Okay, so you're going to write an overview or a summary of what you see. So it really does help to just take a second, look at what your task is, and just think to yourself, what's the first thing that jumps out at me here? What's the first thing I see? Yeah. And you can mention that as well. It says write a minimum of 150 words. You shouldn't be aiming to write much more than that, because you only have a short space of time. Okay. But what I
yes,
say to my students is 150 words is enough to explain the data that you've got there. Obviously, you can't talk about every single thing that you see, but if you're focusing on what you can see and not trying to imagine what that means, if you're not making up scenarios about why it is this way, then you can get it all in within the 150 words. Okay, so your answers must be written in a full text, no bullet points or notes. Okay. So that seems like a strange piece of advice to give you. Don't imagine what you think the data means, okay? And we'll talk about this when I show you the example in a moment. Many students, many students, when they first start writing, they write what they can see, and then they start to say their opinion about it, or they start to write, why they think the data is that way. It's not asking for that really at all. So if you keep that in mind, you're not asked to talk about your opinion of this thing, whether it's good or bad or why it is the way it is. It's asking you to just convert the visual into the text. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Here's an example then.
Okay.
This is the text part of the example. I'm going to show you the image in just a moment, but in order to see it all clearly, I have to show you one at a time. Okay, so it will say on the task, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. That means time to view it and to write your answer. Ideally, time to read it all at the end and double check what you've written. It's amazing how many little typos or little mistakes you will find if you have the time to read through it. So if you finish early, don't just sit back and relax. Read through what you've got. And make sure that you can make any additional corrections before you submit.
Yeah, sometimes I check out my grammar. Is it all right or not?
Great. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, most people find that 20 minutes is just enough to write what they need to write, and they don't really have much time left over. But if you find
sometimes
yourself,
I practice the mock, and I do it. Like I try to finish within. I know it takes more time, but sometimes I really try to finish within my time, and I try to revise for 2 minutes or 1 minute, and I want to correct my words.
great.
Sometimes I make mistakes while in tense, and others I make mistakes sometimes.
Well, that's totally natural, and if you are aiming for band 7, which is the, band 7, 7.5, the usual bands to get entry into a UK university, then band 7 allows for a couple of errors here or there. If you have an extra S on the end of something, or the wrong verb tense, it won't mark you down to a band 4, for having that. But obviously it's best to try and keep the grammar as good as possible. One process that I tend to use with some students is we'll do an exercise together and I'll time it, but the student takes as long as they need for that exercise. Okay, and we'll just see that that's like a starting point. That's a benchmark of where they have started, and then we analyze their process there. Okay, if it took them 40 minutes instead of 20, what did they spend the time on? And then think about how you can improve that, how you can minimize that time. Many students find that if they're writing carefully, they need about 30 minutes, but then the more they practice, the faster they get. The more phrases they learn, the faster they get, because they don't have to think about it too much. But yeah, it's so important to just keep practicing as many times as you can. All right, let's take a look at this question, shall we? So although I am British and we are talking about British university, this is a coincidence that this question is about Britain. They're not always about Britain at all. They're about many, many different things, many different countries here. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, so this chart shows the number of men and women in further education, higher education, university, in Britain in 3 periods, and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. Can you see that's in the form of a statement? That's not a question yet. That's a statement now. That's explaining what the visual aid is going to tell you. Right. Now here comes the task. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so let's take a look at the visual aid. Here's the chart. Let's take a look at this, shall we? You've got lots of, you mentioned earlier, Sanjida, that charts are your favourite ones to study.
Yes.
If you look at this very quickly, you might think, this is one chart, but actually this is 2 charts put together. We've got male on the left and female on the right. Okay. Let me show you alongside the question. Okay, the chart below shows the number of men and women, so male and female, in further education in Britain in 3 periods. Okay, now it's important to check this because some people might look at the first one, 1970, 1980, 1990. Okay, great. Well, you know, it's all going up in time. But as you look closer, it starts again, 1970, 1980, 1990.
Yes.
Okay. So you're taking in, what does the chart show me? Okay. And whether they were studying full-time, that's the dark one here,
Yes.
full-time, or part-time, these larger grey ones. Yeah.
Yes.
And it says summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, let's have a look at some main features. Number of men and women. What can we see on the side there? It's a bit difficult to read, but thousands in further education. Okay, so here you've got about 100,000. Yeah. Here you've got about 1 million. Okay. This is a main feature. Moving on to the females, we've got, you know, the lower level.
The lower one. Yes.
Much lower.
Yes.
Great. And then here, just try to make it around about 200,000. Okay, it's you don't need to be like super accurate, 201,000 or anything like that.
Yes. Or we can say, maybe we can say that above 200.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, above. If it's very close like this, you can say just above as well.
Yes, just above. Yes.
Well over is another one if it's very much over. You know, let's have a look at maybe this one here. You could say almost 800,000.
Almost 800. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly 800,000 there. So there's lots of lovely phrases to describe not only numbers and you know, performance or trends, but also to show, you know, how close to that number it is.
Yes. Would you like to share those phrases with us, like how we can say, how we can describe this almost, above, below?
Yes, I absolutely will. I was planning to do that in the next live event, but we can absolutely talk about that now if you want. Yeah. So this is a whole lesson in itself, Sanjida, because these are really helpful in order to describe in task 1 not only what you can see, but also how it's changed over time, which is quite often a topic that you have to talk about in this exam. Yeah, I will focus on that in more detail, mainly because there are so many of them. It takes up a whole lesson, really. But there's also the phrases to talk about comparing and contrasting as well. You know, and we talked about that together, didn't we, in the last live event, talking about as big as soon as, things like that, or smaller than, less than.
Yes.
So there are so many great phrases to describe trends. Today I want to talk about like picking out the main sort of features of the question and understanding the question. And I'm going to give you a model answer as well, so that we can analyze what they are looking for. Okay, so the next main feature that we'll mention there is the 3 periods. So the word period can be, in American English, that means like the full stop, the little punctuation mark at the end of a sentence, this dot here. Okay, so make sure that you're learning the correct form of the word. In English, we have many different meanings for some words, don't we? Yeah, so make sure you're checking. Periods means an era of time, a period of time here. This one's 1970 to 71. 1980 to 81, and 1990 to 91. I have seen some charts where the time periods or the you know, the measurements, for example, they are irregular, so they don't go up in equal amounts each time. So really make sure you're reading it and not assuming that that's what it says. Yeah. Okay, same on this side. Okay, same periods of time. So where it says where relevant, make comparisons where relevant. Well, that's going to be relevant, isn't it? They're the same time periods, same set of information. The only difference is male and female students.
Female. Yes.
Lovely. Okay. Full-time or part-time? Now just make sure you check the key. Sometimes it's called a key, sometimes it's called a legend, but that just basically means the little explanation of what you're looking at down below. That is going to really help you, as well as the first part of the question. That's really helpful as well in getting started. Okay, so you're summarizing the information to start with, selecting and reporting the main features and making comparisons where relevant. Okay, but not making assumptions. Okay, no assumptions. We don't assume what we believe to be true. Okay, we learn from the graph. We convert the visual aid into text. Okay, so what can we see? Part-time education is generally more popular. That is the first thing that jumps out at me.
Yes.
You know, those grey bars are much higher than the darker black bars, aren't they?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Then you can maybe have a look at some trends. Okay, women increased in both categories.
Yes, from
In both the
970 to 900.
Sorry, Sanjida, I couldn't hear that. I think you might have frozen there. Oh dear, got a little connection issue. Sanjida has frozen, so I'll continue. Hope she comes back in a second. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the comments section as well. Oh, I can see here, Zaheen, you've asked a question. Thank you for joining us. What are the main factors to focus on to improve IELTS reading skill? Great question, Zaheen. I will be covering that in a later live event, because there's so much to teach about the IELTS exam, specifically the academic IELTS exam. It's so important to just break down all of these complicated topics, and each lesson is focused on each main topic, each main skill. It would be totally overwhelming for you. It would be far too confusing for me to cover all of these things in one lesson. So each lesson focuses on a different part of the exam, and we're looking at ideal answers, model answers, skills involved in answering, and also useful phrases and vocabulary to help you so that you can learn these for the exam. But thanks for your questions, Zaheen. Keep your eye out for the next live event. We're going to be doing one more writing, and then I think we'll move on to reading after that. So yes, thanks for the question. Okay, where were we? Right, let's have a look then. I'm going to give you a model answer here. This is the first part of the assignment answer. This is the introduction. Now remember, you're talking about what you can see. The bar chart shows, notice that's in the present simple there, how many men and women were full-time and part-time students in Britain in 3 periods, 1970 to 71, 1980 to 1981, and 1990 to 1991. You just explained what you can see. Yeah, it's not exactly the same as the question here. This is the question. You are paraphrasing. You don't write down exactly what the first part of the question says. You're writing it in your own words. Okay, let's just focus on this a little bit more. The punctuation here is important. Full-time is an adjective here to describe the noun students. Part-time is an adjective to describe the noun students. Okay, so when we have an adjective which is created by 2 different words, we have a hyphen between them. This kind of grammar is called compound adjectives. Okay, so if you're not sure about the rules to that, you can just look that up online. Okay, and if we have more than one compound adjective describing the same noun, students. If we've got two, we can separate them with and. If we've got more than two, we'll need to use a comma. Okay. Now, I'm from Britain. I use the British grammar rules, so I don't have a comma before my and. That's called an Oxford comma, and I don't use that one. Okay, that's a lot to take in, and we're just at the introduction, so I don't want to give you too much information and confuse you. But here, it's a lot of students, they work really hard on their sentence structure, word formation, and other, linking words and other skills like that. And they ignore the importance of punctuation. Punctuation really can save you so many words. Here, my colon is replacing a phrase like in the following years, or such as, or as follows, right? You've got two little dots that says the same thing. It says what comes next is a list of the things I've just explained. Okay, so this is the introduction. The bar chart shows, not is showing. I mean, some people do write that. I think shows is more succinct, and it decreases the number of words that you need to write as well. That also saves you time, doesn't it? Okay. Not the past tense here, because you're looking at the bar chart. It is still there. You can see it right now. It's in the present. Okay. However, of course, we use the past tense when we're talking about these dates, because they have finished now, haven't they? Okay. I'm just going to check, because Sanjita's not here. I'm just going to check if there are any questions. None so far. So let's move on to paragraph 1. Overall, the number of women increased steadily in both full-time and part-time education. Look at that. Overall. Great. Okay, we can see an overview of what's going on here. It increased overall. The number of part-time female students increased dramatically. That's a lovely adverb. It shows it shot up. Right? It increased dramatically. We're talking about this change here. From 700,000 to 1.2 million. Now, as Sanjida very nicely pointed out earlier, you can add additional phrases here to talk about the smaller impacts here. So from, where are we? Oh, no, we're in part-time education here, right? So if you have, this is maybe almost 800,000, isn't it? Okay. And then over here, this is 1.2 million. That's overall. Okay. So there's many ways of saying this. We mentioned this earlier in the conversation. If you want to report this amount here, look, where are we? So it's about 700,000. You could say under 800,000. But here, because we're talking about from 700,000 to 1.2 million, there's quite a lot of words in that phrase, in that clause, isn't there? So maybe just keeping it as simple would be a better option over the 20-year period. Okay, so we're explaining what we can see. The amount of women in full-time education went up more gradually. There's another nice adverb there. Not dramatically this time, but more gradually. From 100,000 in 1971 to just over 200,000 in 1991. Boop. Okay. Yeah. Great. More gradually. Paragraph 2. So notice that in the paragraph 1, I'm talking about women mostly. In paragraph 2, I'm going to move on to the men. The number of men in full-time education rose. Okay. Rise, rose, has risen. Those are the 3 forms of that verb. Okay. Not rised, as many people sometimes say, and not raise. Okay. Raise is a different word. Okay. So the number of men in full-time education rose from approximately 100,000 to 200,000. Okay, full-time education, that's the darker one, 100,000 to just over 200,000. You could say just over there, or more than as well as another one, or just above. Whereas, that's a good linking word for you, the number of men in part-time education was lower. That's a nice comparison in the 80s and 90s than it was in the 70s. Oh, look at that. It's gone down. Okay. Now that part of the graph is a bit of an outlier. It's a bit of an exception there. Everything else has risen. So you can still say in our introduction, overall, sorry, in the paragraph 1, overall, it increased. Okay, because there's just one part which is an exception there, but overall it did increase. Conclusion. To sum up, while it is clear that part-time education was much more popular in all 3 time periods for men and women, the number of women in both sectors increased significantly, while the rate of men entering part-time education fluctuated but decreased overall. Lots of advanced vocabulary there, so let's take a second to analyse that. To sum up, in a future lesson, I'm going to look at some really useful phrases that you can use for task 1. And this is one of my favourites. To sum up, you could say in summary or in conclusion, but make sure you're using the phrase correctly. Some of my students say, let's see, to summary, or maybe in conclude rather than in conclusion. Okay, so make sure you've got the correct phrase there. Some of them have different prepositions, so make sure you've got that correct. While, that's a nice one, while it is clear that, so now you're starting a point. Now, the remaining section of that point continues after the comma here, right? So that's quite a long sentence, isn't it? While it is clear that, I mean, be careful when you use it is clear that. There's got to be a very big difference here to say it's clear that. You know, you can't use it is clear that with smaller differences. But here, this is the first thing we mentioned, isn't it? That the part-time education was much more popular than the full-time education in all 3 time periods for men and women. So while it's clear that the number of women in both sectors increased significantly. Yeah, I might even improve that by adding a full stop or a period there and starting a new sentence there, because that is one long sentence at the moment. So while the rate of men entering part-time education fluctuated but decreased overall. So if we were to put a full stop there, we would need to change this linking word here. We could say full stop. Furthermore, or in addition, you could say moreover, the rate of men entering part-time education fluctuated. That means it went up and down. It wasn't just a steady increase like the part-time female students had, but it went down and then up again. That's called fluctuating. Okay, so it fluctuated, but decreased overall. It didn't actually come back to its previous level. So overall, even though it went up and down, overall, the trajectory went down. Okay, here is the answer altogether. Okay, I was going to ask Sanjida to read that for me, but she unfortunately isn't here. So, oh, have we got an extra question there? Here she comes. Hello.
Hello, Lorraine. I apologize. My internet got disconnected suddenly.
No problem. That certainly happens all the time now that we're all learning online. Sanjida, it's a very common thing.
Yes.
I'm glad you're back, because I was just saying that I would like you to read
the
Of course.
complete answer, if that's okay.
Yeah, the task one.
Yes.
All right. So the bar chart shows how many men and women were full-time and part-time students in Britain in 3 periods: 1970 to 1971, 1980 to 1981, and 1990 to 1991. Overall, the number of women increased steadily in both full-time and part-time education. The number of part-time female students increased dramatically. All right, steadily and dramatically. Okay,
Okay, don't worry, I've got a
dramatically.
note.
Okay, dramatically from 700,000 and 1.2 million over the 20-year period. The amount of women in full-time education went up more gradually from 100,000 in 1971 to just over 200,000 in 1991. All right. The number of men in full-time education rose from approximately 100,000 to 200,000, whereas the number of men in part-time education was lower in the 80s and 90s than it was in the 70s. To sum up, while it is clear that part-time education was much more popular in all 3 time periods for men and women, the number of women in both sectors increased significantly, while the rate of men entering part of part-time education flew, is it fluctuated fluctuated but decreased overall.
Well done. Beautiful reading, Sanjida. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We've got a few tricky words there. Okay, we had
Some phrases, yes.
Yeah. We got steadily.
Steadily.
Yeah. So not wildly, but it was steady. It was predictable. Okay. Dramatically. Where's that? Here it is. Dramatically. Yes. I explained that when we got to it. It means it was a big and probably fast change. Okay.
Yes.
Next one, approximately. Where's that? Here you go. Approximately. Yes. Now, there's a little rule here that I'd like to teach you. So when we have an adjective or a noun that ends in ate, we pronounce that ut. Okay. For example, estimate, adequate, things like that. Okay. When we have a verb that ends in ate, then we pronounce it ate. Estimate. Okay. Let me think. Cooperate is another one. Okay. So the pronunciation of the adjective without ly on the end is approximate. Approximate.
Approximate.
Lovely, Sanjida. And when we add the ly to make it an adverb, we still keep the ut sound there. Okay. Approximately.
Yes. Approximately.
Good. Lovely. Approximately. Very good. Okay. So there are many of these words, so I really recommend looking at the list of them. One of the most common that people often pronounce incorrectly is private. Okay, it's not private, it's private. And therefore privately as well when you add the adverb ly. All right. And finally, fluctuated.
Yes.
That's a difficult one, isn't it? Some difficult consonant clusters in there. Also, ed endings. There are 3 different pronunciations of ed endings. We've got d, t, and id. Here, this is the 3rd one. Id.
Yes.
Good. All right. So here you can see there are 163 words in that answer. The guidance says at least 150. So we're in the right area there. Any more than that, and you probably wouldn't have finished it in time
in the 20 minutes, or at least you certainly wouldn't have time to read it and check it before the time is up. All right, so if anyone's got any questions, actually, Sanjida, while you were away, I answered Zaheen's question about the IELTS reading.
Yes.
So we've covered that one.
Okay.
Oh, great. Yeah, great. Thanks for that.
What are the main
So we've
factors?
covered that one already.
Yeah.
And yeah, did you have any questions? I know you couldn't be here for the whole thing, but do you have any questions, Sanjida?
All right. I have some questions. That is, I want to improve my phrases. So,
Mhm.
so how can I improve my phrases and others to properly use in body paragraph or somewhere if I want to write some paragraph in IELTS?
Great. So in the example that I've got here, there are many phrases there. So one way to do it is to go through a model answer and underline any phrases that you think are quite interesting there. That's one easy way of doing it.
I found some phrases here in the passage that in the first passage and the second here and the last one, I found some.
Great. And we are going to focus on those in greater detail in the next live.
Okay.
Because we have lots of different phrases to describe trends, to compare and contrast. But one thing you can do straight away is to look at a model answer, and you can just Google that, IELTS task 1 model answer, and you can have a look at it and you can say, oh, great, okay, it was lower than, or it rose or increased dramatically. Great. So you're paying attention to that. That's really helpful, because then you can learn which prepositions go before or after the phrase, which collocations you often see together, things like that. So definitely take a look at model answers that are from reputable sources. So there are quite a few out there with mistakes in them, unfortunately. So make sure you're checking it. And obviously come to our live events where I'll teach you everything you need to know.
Yes. I'm so glad to have a nice teacher like you.
Oh, I'm so glad to have a lovely student like you, Sanjida. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we haven't had any other questions come through then. So I think we can call it a day. We can finish up now, Sanjida. So if you'd like to finish up for us.
Yes, sure. আমাদের আজকের রাইটিং টাস্ক পার্ট 1 আশা করি আপনাদেরকে সাহায্য করবে রাইটিং টাস্ক পার্ট 1 এর স্ট্র্যাটেজিস গুলো বুঝতে, যেভাবে লরিন আপনাদেরকে বুঝালো, এবং আমাদের স্লাইডস গুলো আপনারা দেখবেন। আমাদের মার্সিসাইড কনসালটেন্সি বাংলাদেশ পেজে এই ক্লাসটি থাকবে এবং আমাদের ইউটিউব চ্যানেলেও আপনারা এই ক্লাসটি পাবেন। লরিনের সাথে আগামী ক্লাসে লরিন, I think we are going to our next class is going to be about our part writing task 2.
Yes, it will be. And yes, specifically focusing on the phrases in terms of writing task 2. Yes.
Okay. So আমরা আমাদের আগামী ক্লাসে রাইটিং টাস্ক 2 এর ফ্রেজেস গুলো জানবো, এবং এই ক্লাসেও আমরা কিছু ফ্রেজেস শিখতে পেরেছি। এইগুলো আপনারা রিপিট করবেন এবং আমাদের পেজ থেকে দেখে নেবেন ক্লাসগুলো। আশা করি আপনাদেরকে অনেক সাহায্য করবে এই ফ্রেজেস গুলো মনে রাখতে। এবং আগামী ক্লাসে সবার সাথে দেখা হবে ঠিক সোমবার বিকেল 4টায়। সোমবার এবং বৃহস্পতিবার লরিন এবং আমি সঞ্জিতা থাকবো মার্সিসাইড কনসালটেন্সি বাংলাদেশ পেজে। সেই পর্যন্ত সবাই ভালো থাকবেন। Lorraine, thank you so much for teaching us writing and others, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjida, and I'll see you again on Monday.
Of course. See you again and have a very nice day.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Okay, bye.